Mount Shasta is a veritable Chinese buffet of supernatural goodness. And I guarantee that in an hour, you're going to want more. Welcome to the In-Between. I'm Carol Ann, and today's video is a gigantic smorgasbord of history, lore, and high strangeness. Hope you brought your appetite for weirdness as we open up the paranormal fire hose of Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta, located in Northern California, about an hour south of Oregon, is 14,179 feet above sea level within the 2.2 million acre Shasta Trinity National Forest. It is the second highest peak and the southernmost volcano in the Cascade Range. And it appears as though no one has a clue as to when it last erupted. The United States Geological Survey says 3,200 years ago. The Global Volcanism Program says 870 years ago, while sailors of the French La Pérouse expedition say they saw it go off just 200 years ago. But regardless of its past, in 2018, the USGS updated its list of the most hazardous volcanoes in the country, and Mount Shasta ranked 5th out of the list's 18 very high threat volcanoes. I don't really like those odds. Now, in order to put the whole of Mount Shasta craziness into context, I first need to start with the tale of two fabled cities about 1 million years ago. Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean and Lemuria, or Mu, in the Pacific. And according to legend, between these two, they pretty much owned the rest of the world. They are both very technologically advanced. More advanced than we are. And even though Atlantis had the advantage over Lemuria, Atlanteans were a benevolent society that lived in peace with the Lemurians for millennia. However, about 25,000 years ago, the Atlanteans got a little too big for their britches and decided world domination sounded like a good idea. The Lemurians said, "I don't think so," and the two begin a war to end all wars. By the time they're done, their advanced weaponry has done so much damage to the surface of the Earth that the tectonic plates shift, causing the magnetic poles to shift so suddenly that a massive global flood wipes out both civilizations. Millions of people die on both sides. A few surviving Atlanteans evacuate to Agartha, an underground city inside the hollow Earth. Upcoming episode, anyone? The last of the Lemurians fled to Mount Shasta and established a city called Telos, which legend claims now houses 1.5 million highly evolved spiritual beings. Now, the Native American tribes in the area will tell you that Shasta was created by the Old Man of the Sky, who, somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 years ago, wanted to come down to Earth from the heavens, but he didn't have a way to climb down. So he made a hole in the sky and shoved dirt and ice through the hole into a pile until it was tall enough for him to climb down onto the Earth. Then he creates life on Earth, but goes a little nuts about it and makes too many grizzly bears, which scare the crap out of him. So he hollows out the mountain to create a teepee to stay in. They say you could still see the smoke rising from the top until the white man came. Native American tribes are documented as living around that area going back 7,000 to 10,000 years, but it's likely the Lemurians are homeless and looking for new digs before that. So maybe, and I'm just throwing this out here, maybe the Lemurians built the mountain themselves as a new gated community condo complex for themselves. I mean, if they had the technology to destroy the known world, maybe they have the technology to build a mountain. And one of the reasons I say this is because of the location of the mountain. Most mountains are part of a range. I mean, Shasta's part of a range, the Cascade Range, but it's still just sitting there in the middle of relatively flat country, like somebody just plopped it there. I mean, if the Lemurians didn't make it, then the Old Man of the Sky sure did. Fast forward to the summer of 1883. Frederick S. Oliver, a teenager at the time, is helping his family stake out their mining claim. And as he's writing down notes and coordinates of the claim's location, his hand starts shaking and writing notes in his notebook against Frederick's will. He understandably starts to panic and runs home, with his hand trying to write the whole time. Frederick's mother doesn't panic. She just gives him a piece of paper to write on. By the time this episode is over shortly thereafter, Frederick and his mother are shocked to realize that what he has written down is the beginning of some weird dissertation. Over the next few years, Frederick would occasionally have his hand commandeered by this outside force named Philos the Tibetan, who would dictate a few more pages here and there. Philos is a spirit entity who has lived a previous life as an Atlantean, who obviously finds it pretty important to get a hold of somebody who can write down information about the Atlantean civilization. Although, I would think that if they had been that technologically advanced, they would have thought to invent paper. Or maybe Philos is just really bored. Anyway, this goes on until 1895, when Philos has apparently said all he needs to say. Frederick Oliver dies 4 years later at the age of 33. We will come back to Frederick in a moment. Skip ahead a couple of years to 1904, when a British prospector, J.C. Brown, comes to Mount Shasta on behalf of the Lord Cowdray Mining Company to look for gold. One day, while exploring the mountain, Brown stumbles across a rockfall, and it just looks kind of odd, like maybe there's something behind it. So he starts to clear it. And it doesn't take long before he realizes that behind that pile of rocks is a tunnel leading down into the darkness. And seeing as though he's there to look for gold, a tunnel into the mountain is awesome. So he starts down the tunnel. Now, the fact that there's a tunnel there is not that unusual. There are lava tubes all over the mountain that go on for miles, the longest being Pluto's Cave, which is hikeable for over a mile before you get to the unsafe parts. Who knows how long it really is? So JC starts hiking for miles and miles into the darkness. By his estimate, he hikes 11 miles before reaching the end. And what's at the end seems way more valuable than gold. He finds a network of rooms and chambers, almost like an abandoned ancient city. He finds ornate statues that seem to glow in the dark, crystals, tablets, weapons and shields made of gold, and items that to him seem like machines of some kind. But the most shocking find is what looks to be a burial chamber that holds at least 27 mummies ranging from 6 to 10 feet tall in ornately decorated robes. Now, obviously, he's very excited about this find. It is an archaeological Disneyland. But not being an archaeologist, he's not quite sure what to do. So he covers the tunnel entrance and pretends he didn't find anything until he can figure out his next move. 1 year later, so 1905, Frederick Oliver's mom publishes the book of writings her son had channeled over those few years, called A Dweller on Two Planets, which turns out to be a whole accounting of the Atlantean civilization and technology. He even describes some pretty modern concepts like quantum mechanics, anti-gravity, zero-point energy, and mass transit. And the mass transit vehicle of choice? The cigar-shaped airship. Now, apparently, the Lemurians are just a little smarter than the Atlanteans because they don't need to channel anyone to get their history recorded. They manage to write down their history and leave it in the capable hands of the Hindus in India, who then share the information with a guy named James Churchward, who then publishes a book in 1926 detailing the history of Lemuria, which he renames Mu. So back to our guy, J.C. Brown. While he's toiling away at regular life, he's still trying to figure out exactly what it is he found in that cave. He becomes obsessed with Churchward's book about the lost continent of Mu, and most certainly would have heard of the Lemurians as well as Frederick Oliver's book on Atlantis. And after all of his research, he decides that the cave must belong to the Lemurian civilization that is residing in the mountain. That's it. Time to go back. So after 30 years, JC heads back to the Mount Shasta area, and he is so steeped in all of the legend and the lore of the Lemurians that he actually starts giving daily lectures on the topic. Through these lectures, he manages to put together a search team of 80 people, including researchers, scientists, and explorers, to go back to the mountain with him to find the tunnel. The expedition is scheduled for June 19th, 1934. And it's a really big deal. The newspapers write about it, and everybody in town is excited. The whole team of 80 adventurers assembles, ready to find this lost city. But JC is nowhere to be found. In fact, no one sees hide nor hair of him ever again. So what happened to him? Was he taken out by people who didn't want this information getting out? Maybe it was the government. The government keeps secrets? Or did he earn himself a one-way ticket into the city of Telos by the Lemurians themselves? Or maybe he was just a con man. Maybe. But he never took a single dime of anyone's money. Not a very good con man. His strange disappearance obviously leads people to question the authenticity of Brown's entire story of the subterranean city of riches with giant mummies that he supposedly found. But that didn't stop people from looking. Numerous modern explorers have claimed to have found Brown's tunnel, mummies and all, although its location and even its existence remains a mystery. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that somebody has claimed to have figured out the mystery of J.C. Brown. In 2017, a researcher named Stephen Sindoni, who coincidentally is a believer in the legends of Lemuria, well, he tracked down a man named John Benjamin Bodie, a mining engineer who retired in Mount Shasta. Bodie worked for the Lord Cowdery Mining Company. So did J.C. Brown. And Bodie's in-laws lived right across the street from where J.C. Brown had given his daily lectures on Lemuria and the lost city of Telos. Obviously, the inference is that J.C. Brown was really John Benjamin Bodie. Interesting, but why? Why go through all the trouble of setting up this gigantic ruse? Or maybe it's just a coincidence. If they were working for the same company, maybe they were both assigned to the same area. For whatever reason, J.C. Brown is gone, missing. But he's certainly not the only one. Mount Shasta is one of the most notorious spots in the country for mysterious disappearances. And here are a couple of the craziest. On September 2nd, 2011, a family of 4 are camping on Mount Shasta at Camp 4 of Fowler's Campground in the Shasta Trinity National Forest. Around 6 p.m., the 3.5-year-old toddler and his sister are playing with some other kids by the river. The other kids come back, but the boy doesn't. The family immediately launches a search, but after about 15 minutes of not finding him, they don't mess around and call 911. Within 45 minutes of the arrival of the police, 100 people are already searching. So from about 7:30 p.m. to midnight, they are just combing everywhere. Then, just before midnight, the dogs find the boy hiding in a bush on the side of a trail that has already been searched many times. They take him back to camp, and they all have a nice, happy reunion. High fives all around, search successful. Fast forward over a year. A user by the name of Miss Cat 1 posts that she is the grandmother of the 3-year-old boy. She goes on to explain that about 3 weeks after that harrowing camping trip, the boy's at her house and out of the blue says, "I don't like the other Cappy," which was his name for her, Grandma Kathy. So she says, "What are you talking about, buddy? I'm the only Grandma Cappy." He says, "Don't you remember when I was lost in the woods? Well, the other Grandma Cappy grabbed me and took me to a creepy place. She's really a robot." Now, thinking that her grandson just has a wild imagination, she asks him what was creepy about it. It was a cave with spiders, and there were purses and guns. I was too scared, so I didn't touch anything. But when she climbed a ladder, the light made her look like a robot. There were other robots too, but they didn't move. Kathy asks him why he thought she looked like a robot. And he tells his grandma that she had your same hair, your feet, and even your face. And the light sparkled on her, and she looked like a robot. So Kathy's thinking, maybe he means a hologram. So she asks him what a robot is, and he says it's made out of metal and has a remote control. Okay, so he knows what a robot looks like. Her curiosity is at a 10. She asks him for more information, and he tells her, she made me lay down to look at my tummy. Then she tried to get me to poop on a sticky paper, but I couldn't go. She told me that I am from outer space, and they put me in my mommy's tummy. Then she took me back to the river and said to wait under the bush until someone found me. Grandma Kathy calls his dad, wondering what in the hell he's been letting this kid watch on TV. And the dad says, yeah, he told me that story too. Crazy kids, huh? Now, normally, she would have chalked this up to the incredible imagination of a 3-year-old. That is, if she hadn't already had her own experience. Just 1 year earlier, she was camping in the same area with a friend. She's in a tent, and the friend is in a camper. Other than the fact that it's completely silent, they have a nice night by the fire. In fact, neither of them has seen any wildlife so far. No birds, no squirrels, no bugs, except for the 2 crows perched in the trees praying for food scraps to hit the ground. Before they call it a night, they hear something in the trees. So they shine their flashlights in that direction and are met with several pairs of red eyeshine. They just assume it's a herd of deer heading for the river, and they just go to their separate beds. In the morning, Kathy is a little surprised when she wakes up face first in the dirt outside of her tent and sleeping bag. Now, as she puts it, I'm a grandma in my 50s. I don't sleep in the dirt. She notices a pain on the back of her neck and reaches around to discover 2 puncture wounds. Plus, she's violently ill. She puts the puncture wounds together with the nausea and thinks, must be a spider bite. Reasonable conclusion. Except her friend in the camper also wakes up with puncture wounds on the back of his neck and is super sick. Interesting coincidence. Now, all of that might sound just a little too far off the beaten path for some of you, but we have another missing person story that is about as straight as they come. And that is the story of Carl Landers. Carl was a 69-year-old man who was on a mission to summit the highest peak in every county in California. He'd already tackled 57 of the 58, which left Mount Shasta in Siskiyou County in Northern California. And Carl may have been 69, but to summit those other 57 peaks means he's already tackled Mount Whitney at 14,505 feet, White Mountain Peak at 14,252 feet, and Northern Palisade at 14,248 feet, all higher than Shasta. So he's not a novice hiker. Despite his wife having a bad feeling in her gut about this whole trip, on May 24th, 1999, Carl sets out to conquer the last of the giants, Mount Shasta, with a couple of his friends, Barry Gilmore, age 60, and Milton Gaines, age 64, also experienced hikers. So when Carl, Barry, and Milton start off that morning from Bunny Flat Trailhead, heading up the Avalanche Gulch route to the top, everybody thought they're all good to go. The Avalanche Gulch route is a very straightforward trail up to the top and is the route of choice for most people. Now, I'm not going to say that it's easy. It's a total distance up and back, of 11 miles. You're starting at almost 7,000 feet and ascending another 7,300 feet. But as mountain summits go, this one is relatively easy and safe. Should be a routine trip. By the evening of May 24th, the three men had made it all the way past Horse Camp to 50-50 Flats. They stopped there because they wanted to spend the night adjusting to the altitude before heading up to Helen Lake, another campsite just 650 feet away from 50-50 Flats, but a gain in altitude of 1,200 feet. Now, Carl, while definitely in good shape and definitely experienced, was suffering from a little bit of altitude sickness. Altitude sickness is when you get into areas of higher elevation where the oxygen is thinner, making it harder to get enough oxygen and can cause a myriad of flu-like symptoms. The next morning, May 25th, everyone wakes up and Carl says, I'm still not feeling all that great, which means I'm probably going to move slow today. So I'm going to go ahead, and if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to go ahead and get an early start up to Helen Lake, and you guys can just catch up to me there. So he leaves 50-50 Flats for Helen Lake. Just so you know, Helen Lake, not a lake, just a flat area that's a good spot to pitch a tent. Now, for a spring-summer hike like these guys are doing, the temperatures are usually around 60 degrees, and the weather on that particular day is fantastic. Very little wind, full sunshine, just ideal. Carl is wearing 2 or 3 layers of clothes, including a rust-colored jacket, ski pants, and hiking shoes with crampons, which are just spikes that you can clip to your boots to give you better traction on the snow and the ice. He also has a backpack with food and water. And at that elevation, if there isn't snow on the ground, there's very little vegetation. There's a few trees here and there, but for the most part, if you just look up, you'll see your next destination. The trail may meander a little, but it's basically just grass and rocks. Now, to be clear, if you are going from the 50-50 Flats to Helen Lake, there is no way to get off trail. It is just a straight shot up inside a gully. If you fall, you will only slide back down to 50-50 Flats. There are no crevices, there's no woods or underbrush, the trail does not split off, there are no caves. There is nowhere to get lost between Camp 50-50 and Helen Lake. Nowhere. But regardless of what is or isn't possible, when Milton and Barry get up to Helen Lake, Carl's not there. He leaves the 50-50 Flats and just vanishes. Not a trace. No clothes, no backpacks, nothing. And at this time of year, there are always people at Helen Lake. That's the place that most people stop to camp for the night before the final trek to the summit. But no one saw him there. By that afternoon, a search is launched, headed up by Grizz Adams, a guy with 400 search and rescue operations under his belt. The search includes both the U.S. Forest Service and the National Guard, with both the National Guard and the state police contributing helicopters, at least some of which using infrared sensors, or FLIR, scanning completely open territory. And infrared picks up body temperature, so if anything warmer than the ground temperature is there, the infrared sensors would pick it up. But you guessed it, nothing. The next morning, 50 people, including rangers, volunteers, and scent dogs, start searching the trails, including a few climbers that are helicoptered to the top of the mountain to search starting at the top and working their way down, just in case Carl kept going beyond Helen Lake. But any experienced hiker knows to stick to the plan, and the plan was hike to Helen Lake. So Carl should have stopped right there. That was the rendezvous point. That was the plan. Meet there before starting the next stage of the climb. But no one finds a thing. No snowy footprints heading off the trail, and the scent dogs pick up nothing. Grizz Adams, the head of the search and rescue operation, actually spoke with David Paulides, who most of you know as the author of the Missing 411 book series. And Grizz told David, "In 35 years, I have never had this happen to me. We were all over that mountain. He was not on the mountain." Now, as far as what happened to Carl, Grizz had this to say. That's the million-dollar question. He either went up it or in it, but he is not on it. In addition, a spokeswoman for the Siskiyou Sheriff's Department released this. "We've just looked everywhere we can look, and we just don't know where else to look." And it's not like he's out in the middle of the deep woods in the middle of nowhere. In fact, there were a bunch of other people around Helen Lake at the time of his disappearance, and no one sees him? I'm starting to think harder about those Lemurians. So what happened to him? Well, there are a couple of options. Suicide by mountain? Not likely. He had a great family life and was tackling the very last piece he needed to complete his bucket list goal of summiting all 58 county peaks. Maybe some kind of altitude-induced dementia or other health-related event? Well, things like that are not uncommon for a man of his age. But even if something did happen to him, where would he go? If he collapses on the trail, his friends would find him. And if he lapses into some kind of fugue state where he has no idea where he is and wanders off, the infrared sensors would find him. Animal attack. Nope. There are no large mammals that live at this high of an altitude. Foul play? Maybe. But it's determined that neither of his friends have any motive for killing him. Not to mention the fact that you would have to be pretty stupid to kill someone at that spot, considering there is absolutely no place to hide a body. In the 25 years that have passed, not a trace of Carl has ever been found. This is one of those total head-scratcher cases where being taken by the Lemurians is about the only option left. Now, if there is a whole civilization of people living within the mountain, they are going to have to get out of the mountain on occasion, right? And how would they do that? Well, we already know their vehicle of choice is the cigar-shaped airship. Sounds funny, but there have been UFO sightings around Mount Shasta for over 100 years. Of the top 300 UFO hotspots in the world, Mount Shasta is ranked 13th. Some people have seen metallic objects hovering in the air, while others report light formations around the mountain peak, so way higher than a normal drone can fly. And they just disappear. One of the more widely known recent sightings is the flying jellyfish of 2008. The Mount Shasta Herald reported that the residents of the McLeod area saw what looks like a giant glowing jellyfish hovering over the mountain. It made no noise, but it looked like it had a fire burning inside of it. We don't have any pictures of this one, but last year, someone captured this footage while looking out the window of an airplane. And sometimes people see flying objects fly right into the side of the mountain, like it's flying right through solid rock. I told you those Lemurians were getting bored inside that mountain. Mount Shasta is one of the few places in the world that can boast a very unique weather phenomena called lenticular cloud formation. And when you see these pictures, it's easy to see why stories abound about UFO activity on the mountain. But the reality of UFOs around the mountain is actually very well documented. The National UFO Reporting Center, or NUFORC, alone has 58 reports dating back to just 2004 that just have the name Shasta in them. So it doesn't include anything that someone might have entered with just their city name, like Azalea, Black Butte, or Weed.
Ah, man. That's some heavy shit.
One great sighting was reported to NUFORC as happening in either 1964 or 1965. A bunch of 5th and 6th graders are outside for a school assembly in what is now the city of Shasta Lake. The weather's nice and the sky is clear. There are about 45 people gathered, including students, secretaries, and teachers, when a silver disc-shaped craft flies over the school grounds with no noise, very low, just above the tall pine trees. It glides over them and appears to land in some trees behind the school. The teachers get everyone inside and to their classrooms, where the kids just sit in silence, and they're told that the sheriff has been called. The witness then sees a man walk by their classroom window, which is on the opposite side of the school from where the main school doors and the principal's office are located. So presumably the place that the sheriff would go. The man is not wearing a law enforcement uniform, but instead is wearing a black suit and carrying a briefcase. Men in black! And walking in the direction of where the craft would have landed. At 2 p.m., the bell rings and everyone is dismissed for the day. The witness and their friend immediately head out to where they think this thing must have landed and meet some friends who are already on their way back. The friends tell them that the ship is gone, but the witness and their friend go to check it out anyway. They find a roughly 40-foot diameter ring with burn marks along the outside. Later, they even bring their mom to the area, who witnesses the ring as well. And even years later, the witness says they returned to that spot to find nothing growing there. Now, I find it interesting that most modern reports of alien encounters describe aliens that are about 4 feet tall, but Lemurians are rumored to be 10 to 15 feet tall. In fact, in 1930, a humanoid skeleton over 8 feet tall was discovered 12 feet deep under a lava flow in Shasta County, just south of Mount Shasta. And we still have the newspaper accounts to prove it. And Native American folklore says a race of giants existed on the earth for thousands of years, but were suddenly wiped out in a great flood. Why is it always a flood? Were they Lemurians? Or are they the ancestors of the giants we know today? It's December 1999 in Northern California, so it's no real surprise when one day it starts snowing. But it snows enough throughout the morning that young Tyler's school in the town of Mount Shasta eventually throws in the towel and closes for the day, shipping Tyler and all the rest of the kids home before the snow gets too deep to do so safely. And I guarantee from experience that every single kid in that school is praying that the snow keeps coming so they don't have to go to school the next day either. When Tyler gets home, surprise, his dad has the rest of the day off too and says, "Hey, Tyler, want to go sledding?" Well, of course, that's a stupid question to ask a young boy with a free afternoon and a snowstorm. So his dad has done a lot of cross-country skiing around different areas of the mountain and knew that area really well. So he picks out a great spot for sledding, and they grab an inflatable saucer and a runner sled. Runner sleds are those old-fashioned wooden sleds with metal runners on the bottom, and the runners in the front turn just enough to let you steer a little bit, so if you're heading right for something, you can at least avoid a collision. And so they get to this hill, and it's still snowing pretty good, which is probably why nobody else was out there. Tyler and his dad have a great time climbing up, sledding down, trading sleds, just pure little boy joy. And somewhere around half an hour, 45 minutes in, Tyler and his dad are both at the top of the hill. Tyler sees his dad staring down into the tree line that's at the bottom of the hill and to the left. At the bottom to the right, it's clear, and that's where the cars would park. So he sees his dad staring into the forest. And he doesn't know it, but his dad sees a dark shape moving just inside the tree line. Tyler turns his head and tries to see what his dad is seeing, but he doesn't see anything for a second. But then he does. Whatever this thing is that his dad has been watching, it steps out of the tree line and into the snowy clearing to the left of the sled run, about 250 feet away. It was on 2 feet with broad shoulders, standing perfectly still. Tyler and his dad are both staring and squinting at it, trying to figure out what exactly that they're looking at. Tyler's paging through his catalog of known animals in his brain and it's coming up empty. So he looks at his dad and waits for him to say something like, "Oh, look, there's a bear," or "Oh, look, there's a mountain lion." Just then, this thing drops to all fours and starts running at them, coming up the slope from the base of the hill, looking like it's coming right towards them. Tyler's dad is still staring at it, trying to figure out what it is. And finally, Tyler asks him, "Dad, what is that?" And right at that moment, his dad turns, picks Tyler up, puts him on the runner sled, gets on the back of the sled, and takes off down the hill, not even bothering to grab the other sled. Sounds crazy, but they really didn't have anywhere else to go. The back of the hill slopes off really deep, and at the bottom, there's a fence. Outrunning this, whatever it is their only option. So they are tearing down this slope, and this thing is coming up from the left at an intercept angle towards them, while they are angling to the right towards the clearing where the car's parked. Tyler's dad, with Tyler between his legs, is steering the sled with his feet, riding the line between turning right as sharply as he can and turning too sharply, which will flip the sled over. Obviously, suboptimal. Tyler doesn't even want to know what is happening, so he covers his face with his hands until the need to know just becomes too much and he peeks between his fingers. He sees this thing coming right towards them from the left with large black shoulders, still running on all fours. And it's close enough now that he can see that what looked before like front legs are actually arms. It has shiny black hair, a big brow ridge on its flat face, a thin, wide mouth with long black hair around it, big, round eyes, and it's galloping right at them. His dad yells, "Get out of here!" as they pass it, barely beating it to the interception point. They were so close that Tyler thought this thing was going to reach out and just knock them both off the sled. But it didn't. They continue down to the bottom of the hill where Tyler's dad pushes him off the sled, stands up, picks Tyler up by the arm, and they both start running, leaving the sled behind. More snow has fallen in the tracks that they had made coming in, and Tyler is running as fast as he can, but the snow is thick and deep. His dad just says, "Don't look back." Tyler keeps running, but he can't help it. He looks back and he sees the thing, and it looks like it's stopped and it's heading back up the hill. He keeps running and after a few seconds looks again. Now it's at the top of the hill, pacing back and forth, standing upright again. As they're both running towards the car, they see coming up this small slope some men that look like they're in the military, including guns. His dad says, "Hello," as one of the men steps forward ahead of the others and starts talking to his dad. They both turn and start walking away from Tyler, so he can't quite hear them, but it sounds like his dad is telling him what just happened. The two men chat for a minute or so, and the military man gestures for the other soldiers to move out. They're going in the wrong direction. Tyler is just about to say something when his dad turns and looks at him, telling Tyler with his look, "Be quiet, don't say anything." Tyler shuts his mouth and the men continue on their way. Then the lead military guy starts patting down his dad, looking for something. And at first, Tyler thinks he's looking for weapons, but the more he thinks about it, he realizes the guy's not looking for weapons. He's looking for a camera or anything else that could blow up this cover-up. He finds nothing, lets him go, and Tyler and his dad walk back to their car and go home. And it isn't until some time later that Tyler's dad tells him that he deliberately sent those soldiers in the wrong direction. He said that when they were coming down the slope on the sled, he looked in the face of this animal, this Sasquatch, running on all fours, and saw in its face this overwhelming fear, and that this thing just wanted to be left alone. And we would certainly be remiss if we didn't also include Sasquatch's close cousin, Bat Squatch. The stories of Bat Squatch begin with the eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington in the 1980s. But one day in 2009, Paul Dale Roberts from Haunted and Paranormal Investigations International gets a phone call. The caller says that he and his friend were hiking around Mount Shasta, and out of one of the crevices in the side of the mountain flies out this big creature, as tall as a man, as stocky as Hulk Hogan, and leathery wings with a span of about 50 feet. This thing was so freaky that even with a camera in his hands, he was too freaked out to get a picture. Now I hear you yelling out there, "What? No picture?" Well, once you come face to face with a Bat Squatch, let me know how you react. At first, he thought maybe it was a pterodactyl, but after looking up a picture of a pterodactyl, he says that's not it. The head is more like that of a bat or a fox. It was flying or gliding really fast and finally flew into a clump of trees and vanished. And for all you Dogman fans out there who probably think I've forgotten about you, I have not. This little tale comes from Redditor 420 Blaze It. He and his wife are driving south on Highway 97, which is on the north side of Mount Shasta. It's around midnight, and they're driving through a heavily wooded area with no streetlights, so all they have is the car's headlights. They round a corner and see something fast and low to the ground dart across the street about 50 to 60 yards ahead of them. But that brief moment is enough for him to see the glowing animal eyes and a body that is the size and shape of a big dog. The body wasn't 100% clear because the car's headlights hadn't quite reached that section of the road yet, but that does mean that the glowing eyes are not glowing from eye shine. They're just glowing. He asks his wife, "Did you see that?" And his wife says, "Yup." So when they get to the exact point in the road where the animal had crossed, he slows the car and they both look to see if there's anything there. Is there a dog man? Nope, something weirder. There's a man dressed in army fatigues walking down the road. He doesn't even look at them. He just keeps walking. It's pitch black and he doesn't have any type of light with him. He is only lit up by their headlights. They both get full body chills and are properly creeped out. Now, when we're talking about these areas that just seem to be focal points of high strangeness, we expect to hear stories of UFOs and cryptid sightings. But Shasta also has its fair share of tales that are just plain weird. In 2011, a man from Los Angeles is hiking the Pacific Crest Trail near Mount Shasta when he hears the beautiful singing of a woman's voice. Now, he follows the voice and becomes lost in the woods, only to be abducted and taken to a dark chamber in a cave. Once there, he is stripped naked and is approached by a tall woman with striking, beautiful blue eyes and bizarre, strange clothing. She gives him a gift, some secret information. And this guy was gone for weeks. When he finally does reappear, he believes he is the 10th incarnation of Vishnu, a messianic Hindu god. He changed his name to Lord Kelki and never divulges the secret information given to him by the mysterious woman. Another strange event is in an article written by Andrew Thomas and published in the Australian Flying Saucer Review in 1962. A very curious event happened around the mountain in 1931. A forest fire was raging around the mountain, threatening to consume everything in sight, when out of nowhere, a foggy mist appears and advances in the direction of the fire line. And when the mist meets the fire stops in its tracks and is contained while it either burns itself out or is able to be extinguished. Once the fire is out, locals could see a clear line of demarcation where the mist had protected the forest around the mountain. Let's not forget that Mount Shasta is also the location of events that are just weirdly terrifying. Brent Swancer, writing for Mysterious Universe, reports a tale sent to him personally. Back in the 1980s, a man decides to take advantage of the beautiful sunny day and goes for a walk on one of the hiking trails in the area. As he's strolling along, the picture-perfect weather turns gray and sour on a dime. And he's just standing there wondering what the hell is going on with the weather when he sees a thick, soupy mist coming from the forest in front of him, spreading through the brush on the ground. And he's just standing there trying to process this misty mass that looks like it came out of a 1950s horror film. 2 deer come bolting from the trees, with one of the deer flying right past him just a few feet away, totally ignoring him. The other one stops in the same clearing he's in and just kind of freezes. Then this mist, which had just kind of been hugging the ground, speeds up. When it reaches the deer's feet, the deer goes into convulsions and falls to the ground. That's when he sees this bigger wall of fog coming from the trees that heads straight for the deer. The fog is about as thick and dense as fog can get, more of like a blob-like mass, and it stops right at the fallen deer. After a few minutes, the fog dissipates, the mist rolls away, and the sky is bright and sunny again. But no deer. It's gone. No body, blood, bones, nothing. It didn't get up and run away, because he would have seen that. It never left that fog. It was just erased. And now he wonders what would have happened if there were no deer and it was just him that was in that clearing. And now that we all feel like we need a spiritual shower, let's talk about the huge influx of spiritualism to the area. I mean, all the regular religions are there. The Catholics, the Lutherans, the Baptists, etc. The Buddhists actually built an abbey there. Hindus are there, and the occasional cult, allegedly. But probably the most talked about religion, at least when you're talking about Mount Shasta, is the I Am Activity movement. In the 1930s, Guy Ballard, a mining engineer, was exploring Mount Shasta looking for a branch of the Great White Brotherhood known as the Brotherhood of Mount Shasta, which is a New Age spiritual belief system, when he stops for a break and takes a cup to get some fresh spring water. As he does, an electrifying jolt runs through his body. He turns around to see a man standing there, just looking like another hiker. But Guy has the feeling that this is no ordinary man. The man tells him, "Give me your cup, and I will give you something to drink that is more refreshing than spring water." Guy hands over his cup, and the water is instantly changed into a white milky liquid. Guy drinks the white liquid and feels an instant surge of energy. And the man tells him that what he just drank comes directly from the universal supply. It is life. Omnipresent life. The man goes on to reveal himself as being the one and only Count of Saint Germain, which is a name some of you might recognize because he's pretty famous in the paranormal world as the immortal man who never ages beyond 45 years old. Guy and his wife Edna go on to take the teachings of Saint Germain and use them to found the I Am Activity movement and the Saint Germain Foundation. It wasn't a small movement either. At its peak, it had over 1 million followers. But then Guy dies and some followers leave. And then Edna is sued for copyright infringement and some more followers leave. But the I Am Activity movement is still around. And if you're so inclined, you can go to see the I Am Reading Room in Mount Shasta City. Interesting note, that copyright infringement case, they were sued by the family of Frederick S. Oliver. Remember? The guy who channeled Philos the Atlantean? Well, apparently, the Ballards lifted some of their materials straight from Frederick Oliver's book, A Dweller on Two Planets. But get this, the case was thrown out because in the foreword of the book, written by Frederick himself, he says that he is not the author, merely the secretary chosen by the Lemurians to write down their message. And even the copyright of the book lists him as the proprietor, not as the author. So, if he didn't write it, then the Ballards didn't infringe on anything. Wow! One thing that cannot be denied is that there are a whole lot of people out there who feel a spiritual connection to this mountain, which is believed to be one of the 7 sacred peaks on Earth. A full 25 to 50% of the tourists who visit the mountain and the city of Mount Shasta come looking for some kind of spiritual experience, also known as spiritual tourists. And there are plenty of companies in the area to help them, offering guided vision quests, shamanic awakenings, vortex visits, and crystal collections. The area is home to more than 100 different spiritual sects or religions and dozens of New Age businesses. And many of those tourists never leave, instead opting to heed the call of the mountain. Louis Elbinger, a retiree who started a donation-based tea shop in Mount Shasta, says, "I was called. The mountain called me. When I'm walking through the forest, I feel like I'm walking through a cathedral." Few places on this earth speak to everyone, natural and supernatural alike, like Mount Shasta. And if you ever do decide to go visit this breathtaking place of energy and mystery, make sure you heed the warning of the local natives. Do not go above the tree line. That area is reserved for the sky people. Holy Moses, that's a lot of weird stuff. And as usual, there's more that I didn't even get to cover. But the good news is that I'm already curating the overflow into a part 2. So if you want to see that episode as well, it'll be right here when it comes out. In the meantime, YouTube will be picking something out just for you. Be careful out there, and I will see you here again on the In-Between.